Greetings, Israel. This is part 4 of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. So let's begin. Resolutions of our government will be final, without appeal. In the Goy societies, in which we have planted and deeply rooted discord and Protestantism, the only possible way of restoring order is to employ merciless measures that prove the direct force of authority. No regard must be paid to the victims who fall. They suffer for the well-being of the future. The attainment of that well-being, even at the expense of sacrifices, is the duty of any kind of government that acknowledges as justification for its existence not only its privileges but its obligations. The principal guarantee of stability of rule is to confirm the aureole of power, and this aureole is attained only by such a majestic inflexibility of might as shall carry on its face the emblems of inviolability from mystical causes, from the choice of God. Such was, until recent times, the Russian autocracy, the one and only serious foe we had in the world, without counting the papacy. Bear in mind the example when Italy, drenched with blood, never touched a hair of the head of Sulla, who had poured forth that blood. Sulla enjoyed an apotheosis for his might in him, but his intrepid return to Italy ringed him round with inviolability. The people do not lay a finger on him who hypothesizes them by his daring and strength of mind. Secret societies. Meantime, however, until we come into our kingdom, we shall act in the contrary way. We shall create and multiply free Masonic lodges in all of the countries of the world. Absorb them into them all who may become or who are prominent in public activity. For these lodges we shall find our principal intelligence office and means of influence. All these lodges we shall bring under one central administration, known to us alone, and to all others absolutely unknown, which will be composed of our learned elders. The lodges will have their representatives who will serve to screen the above-mentioned administration of Masonry, and from whom will issue the watchword and program. In these lodges we shall tie together the knot which binds together all revolutionary and liberal elements. Their composition will be made up of all strata of society. The most secret political plot will be known to us and fall under our guiding hand on the very day of their conception. Among the members of these lodges will be almost all the agents of international and national police. International Order Police, right? Since their service is for us irreplaceable in the respect that the police is in a position not only to use its own particular measures with the insubordinate, but also to screen out activities and provide pretexts for discontents, etc. So now, Israel, you know why the police force has a fraternal order of police that protects them, that uses money to get them out of trouble when they murder people. It's all part of this secret society system. And the way the system really works in America is the people that are in power, most of them, not all of them, but the ones that are at the very top, right? Governors, senators, congressmen, corporate executives, they are members of Freemasonry. This is the way you climb to the top in America. It's not by performance. It's not by working hard. You can be dumb as hell and still run corporations, still be a senator. As long as you're a Freemason, you're under their control. The class of people who most willingly enter into secret societies are those who live by their wits. Careerists, and in general, people mostly light-minded, with whom we shall have no difficulty in dealing and in using to wind up the mechanism of machine devised by us. If this world grows agitated, the meaning of that will be that we have had to stir up in order to break up its too great solidarity. But if there should arise in its midst a plot, then at the head of that plot will be no other than one of our most trusted servants. This is so true. It is natural that we and no other should lead Masonic activities, for we know whither we are leading. We know the final goal of every form of activity, whereas the Goyim have knowledge of nothing, not even of immediate effect of action. They put before themselves usually the monetary reckoning of the satisfaction of their self-opinion and the accomplishment of their thought, without even remarking that the very conception never belonged to their initiative, but to our instigation of their thought. Gentiles are stupid. The Goyim enter the lodges out of curiosity, or in the hope by their means to get a nibble at the public pie, and some of them in order to obtain a hearing before the public for their impracticable and groundless fantasies. So doesn't this sound like the world you live in, Israel? This is everything we experience on a day-to-day basis. This is how the system works worldwide. It's an artificial system constructed by these people, by Esau. And that's why Esau is always at war with God. And that's why God always hates Esau. And in the future, God's going to tear it all down. Gentiles go into captivity for probably minimum 400 years, probably 800 years, right? Because they get double. It's going to take them that long to rebuild. And when they rebuild, that's when Gog and Magog get strong enough to finally come against Israel that's sitting in the land of unwalled villages. They thirst for the emotion of success and applause, of which we are remarkably generous. And the reason why we give them this success is to make use of the nigh conceit of themselves to which it gives birth. For that insensibly disposes them to assimilate our suggestions without being on their guard against them, in the fullness of their confidence that it is their own infallibility which is giving utterance to their own thoughts, and that it is impossible for them to borrow those of others. You cannot imagine to what extent the wisest of the Goyim can be brought to a state of unconscious naivete in the presence of this condition of high conceit of themselves, and at the same time how easy it is to take the heart out of them by the slightest ill success, though it is nothing more than the stoppage of the applause they had, and to reduce them to a slavish submission for the sake of winning a renewal of success. By so much as our disregard success, if only they can carry through their plans, by so much the Goyim are willing to sacrifice any plans only to have success. This psychology of theirs materially facilitates for us the task of setting them in the required direction. These tigers in appearance have the souls of sheep and the wind blows freely through their heads. We have set them on the hobby horse of an idea about the absorption of individuality by the symbolic unit of collectivism. They have never yet, and they never will, have the sense to reflect that this hobby horse is a manifest violation of the most important law of nature, which has established from the very creation of the world one unit unlike another, and precisely for the purpose of instituting individuality. So individuality, Israel, is what they push today, and this is the reason for most of the wars. It's not for oil, it's not for land. They control the money, they control the world system. So they create war to create immigrants. And so once you immigrate to another country, you abandon your tribal ways, right? Because the tribe protects the people from enemies, and the tribal mindset protects the people's moral values. So in order to take over the world, you have to replace tribalism, or the tribe mindset, or the mind of the community, to individualism. And so that's what they promote, and they create immigrants when they create wars and force people out of their land, right? They create individualism and destroy tribalism, because it is the tribe that is the danger. It is the mindset of being a collective people that is the danger. So it's the most important thing for them to do is break down the collectivism, or the unity, or the solidarity that's in tribalism, right? And so this is why you keep seeing wars, because they already control the world. They control the monetary system, right? They have everybody marching to the beat of their drum for the most part, right? But what they haven't totally disassembled is the community. So what are they going to do about Israel, since the Most High is reuniting us as a tribe? They're going to bring war, just like they do to other tribal groups. They bring division, they bring war, they bring fear, and create immigrants. So be concerned about that going forward as we exit Babylon. If we have been able to bring them to such a pitch of stupid blindness, is it not a proof, and an amazingly clear proof, of the degree to which the mind of the Goyim is undeveloped in comparison with our mind? This it is, mainly, which guarantees our success. Gentiles are cattle. And how far-seeing were our learned elders in ancient times when they said that to attain a serious end, it behooves not to stop at any means, or to count the victims sacrificed for the sake of that end. So the means justifies the end, no matter how many you kill. We have not counted the victims of the seed of the Goy cattle, though we have sacrificed many of our own, but for that we have now already given them such a position on the earth as they could not even have dreamed of. The comparatively small numbers of the victims from the number of ours have preserved our nationality from destruction. Death is the inevitable end for all. It is better to bring that end nearer to those who hinder our affairs than to ourselves, to the founders of this affair. We execute Masons in such wise that none, save the Brotherhood, can ever have a suspicion of it, not even the victims themselves of our death sentence. They all die when required, as if a normal kind of illness. Knowing this, even the Brotherhood in its turn dare not protest. By such methods we have plucked out the midst of Masonry the very root of protest against our disposition, while preaching liberalism to the Goy, we at the same time keep our own people and our agents in a state of unquestioningly submission. So they make people disappear who oppose them even when it's their own. You see how some of these people who oppose the enemy, they end up with cancer that's at a high growth rate that takes them out over months, and it came out of nowhere. Right? This is how they do. And when they want to make a statement to the world or to those who might consider opposing them, they do a public execution like they did John F. Kennedy. Under our influence, the execution of the laws of the Goyim has been reduced to a minimum. The prestige of the law has been exploded by the liberal interpretations introduced into this sphere. In the most important and fundamental affairs and questions, judges decide as we dictate to them. See matters in the light wherewith we enfold them for the administration of the Goyim. Of course, through persons who are our tools, though we do not appear to have anything in common with them, by newspaper opinion or by other means. Even senators and the higher administration accept our counsel. The purely brute mind of the Goyim is incapable of use for analysis and observation, and still more for the foreseeing whither a certain manner of setting a question may tend. In this difference in capacity for thought between the Goyim and ourselves may be clearly discerned the seal of our position as the chosen people and of our higher quality of humanness. In contradiction to the brute mind of Goyim, their eyes are open but see nothing before them, and do not invent unless perhaps material things. From this it is plain that nature herself has destined us to guide and rule the world. So as scripture says, Esau rules the world at the end of the age, and he gets his allies to help him. And they go up against Israel once Israel's back in the land. So how does Israel get back in the land? The Most High is going to wipe out the people that are in the land, just like he did in old times, just like he did with the Canaanites. Right? He went in there and swept it out, and then brought his people in. Right? And many times he uses people to sweep them out. But I think the 4 horsemen are going to do that. I mean, I'm not the horsemen, sorry. The 4 carpenters are going to do that. Okay? And they're going to clean it, prepare it. So, Saudi Arabia, they still enslave our people openly. And they still do things like create eunuchs of our people openly. And no one says, no one does anything. And they're sitting in part of the land that was given to Judah. And God, the Most High, Father Yah, is going to come in and sweep it clean. So that's how Israel gets back into their land. World War III is going to sweep the Middle East clean. So be prepared. I mean, you can feel it in the air, Israel. The evil is thick. The devilishness is thick in the air, and the Most High is going to make things right. He's going to put things back in order for some time until Armageddon. Right? And Armageddon probably won't happen for minimum 400 years, maybe 800 years, and that's how we see it. Right? Israel goes back to the land. They sit at peace in unwalled villages. Esau rebuilds, as he always said. The Lord said, I'm going to tear it down. And Esau said, you might tear it down, but we're going to rebuild, right? The Lord said, if you rebuild, I'm going to tear it down again, but they will rebuild. So I think World War III tears it down. prepares the land for the return of the chosen sons of the Most High. Israel returns to their land, lives there with their former slave owners becoming their slaves. Right? And then the Gog-Magog Ezekiel 38 war happens later, hundreds of years later, according to how we see it at this time. And they invade the land of unwalled villages, and the war gets really serious. Israel puts up a serious fight. It looks like they're losing, and then Jesus comes and rescues them, as in Revelation, the book of Revelation. Okay. We demand submission. When comes the time of our overt rule, the time to manifest His blessing, we shall remake all legislatures. All our laws will be brief, plain, stable, without any kind of interpretations, so that anyone will be in a position to know them perfectly. Why is that not the case today? They can interpret laws however they want to, but going in the future, it's going to be solid. So if one person commits a crime and a black person commits the same crime, in the future, they're saying the law will apply perfectly. So if the law says selling weed is 5 years in prison, for a white man, for selling weed in prison, it's going to be 5 years for white or black. Today, that's not the case. But in their kingdom, this will be the case. The main feature which will run right through them is submission to orders, and this principle will be carried to a grandiose height. Every abuse will then disappear in consequence of the responsibility of all down to the lowest unit before the higher authority of the representative of power. Abuses of power subordinate to this last instance will be so mercilessly punished that none will be found anxious to try experiments with their own powers. We shall follow up jealously every action of the administration on which depends the smooth running of the machinery of the state. For slackness in this produces slackness everywhere. Not a single case of the illegality or abuse of power will be left without exemplary punishment. Concealment of guilt, connivance between those in the service of the administration, all this kind of evil will disappear after the very first examples of severe punishment. The aureole of our power demands suitable, that is cruel, punishments for the slightest infringement for the sake of gain of its supreme prestige. Like Singapore, like Rwanda, if you drop gum on the sidewalk, the punishment for that dropping gum on the sidewalk is severe, right? So how do you make sure you have the most perfectly clean streets where there's not even gum or paper and everyone is forced to pick it up? The punishment for doing so is extremely unreasonable. Thereby everybody complies. That's what he's saying. The sufferer, though his punishment may exceed his fault, will count as a soldier falling on the administrative field of battle in the interest of authority, principle, and law, which do not permit that any of those who hold the reins of the public coach should turn aside from the public highway to their own private paths. For examples, our judges will know that whenever they feel disposed to plume themselves on foolish clemency, they are violating the law of justice, which is instituted for the exemplary edification of men by penalties for lapses and not for display of the spiritual qualities of the judges. Such qualities it is proper to show in private life, but not in a public square, which is educationally basis of human life. So like the Soviet Union used to be, heavy-handed, keep the people in fear of the law, make examples of people so that the rest fall in line, which is how Singapore and Rwanda is as well. Our legal staff will serve not beyond the age of 55. Firstly, because old men more obstinately hold to prejudiced opinions and are less capable of submitting to new directions. And secondly, because this will give us the possibility by this measure of securing elasticity in the changing of staff, which will thus the more easily bend under our pressure. He who wishes to keep his place will have to give blind obedience to deserve it. Good thing the Most High exists, right? Because this evil is overwhelming, and this is a matrix, and the world is in trouble right now, since these people are really coming to their power in full force. In general, our judges will be elected by us only from among those who thoroughly understand that the part they have to play is to punish and apply laws, and not to dream about the manifestations of liberalism at the expense of the educational scheme of the state, as the Goyim in these days imagine it to be. So the Goy, they think the legal system is fair and that it is merciful. They're saying it's not going to be merciful, and there will be no wiggle way out, no interpretation left up to the judge. It's going to be whatever the law is, the hammer drops. So when the police fabricate a crime and frame you for it, the law that's on the books for that crime, you're going to get the full weight of the measure of that law against you. That's their plan. This method of shuffling the staff will serve also to explode any collective solidarity of those in the same service, and will bind all to the interest of the government upon which their fate will depend. The young generation of judges will be trained in certain views regarding the inadmissibility of any abuses that might disturb the established order of our subjects among themselves. So understand, this system they're talking about, we live in it today. It's just not to its completion and fullness. We see all these things happening today. But this is an artificial system, by the way. This system is not meant to exist, and it takes a lot to keep it going. And so the Most High will tear it down. But this is not the way you're supposed to live. You're not supposed to be hustling for a job to work for them. Because these so-called people, the Luciferian order, Esau, these people are not meant to rule you in this way. You are supposed to enjoy God's creation. You're supposed to have access to God's land, and you're not supposed to pay for it. But today you have to pay for anything that's good. You have to pay to see God's creation. You have to pay to go and see, a preservation reserve, right? Like Yosemite National Park. You have to pay. This is God's creation that he gave for you, and you have to pay. You have to pay to operate in this system. You have to pay to travel from one end to the other. It's not meant to be this way. This system is artificial. It is not the system you were meant to live in under the guiding of the Most High. Free travel should be your right, like 200 years ago, or maybe 300 years ago, and prior. It's artificial, set up by these people. And this document is basically a summary of what they're doing, right? It's an overview of how this system works. And that the so-called Goy, the average man of all races, is never supposed to understand that he is stuck in a matrix and is trapped. Our legal staff will serve not beyond the age of 55. Firstly, because old men. Okay, I read that. Sorry. Let's go to 15. Oops. Okay. In these days, the judges of the Goyim create indulgences to every kind of crimes, not having a just understanding of their office, because the rulers of the present age, in appointing judges to office, take no care to inculcate in them a sense of duty and consciousness of the matter which is demanded of them, as a brute beast lets out its young in search of prey. So do the Goyim give to them for what purpose such place was created. This is the reason why their governments are being ruined by their own forces through the acts of their own administration. Let us borrow from the example of the results of these actions yet another lesson for our government. We shall root out liberalism from all the important strategic posts of our government, on which depends the training of subordinates for our state structure. Such posts will fall exclusively to who have been trained by us for administrative rule. To the possible objection that the retirement of old servants will cost the treasury heavily, I reply, firstly, they will be provided with some private service in place of what they lose, and secondly, I have to remark that all the money in the world will be concentrated in our hands. Consequently, it is not our government that has to fear expense. We shall be cruel. Our absolutism will, in all things, be logically consecutive, and therefore, in each one of its decrees, our supreme will be respected and unquestionably fulfilled. It will ignore all murmurs, all discontents of every kind, and will destroy to the root every kind of manifestation of them and act by punishment of an exemplary character. We shall abolish the right of cessation, which will be transferred exclusively to our disposal, to the cognizance of him who rules. For we must not allow the conception among the people of a thought that there could be such a thing as a decision that is not right of judges set up by us. If, however, anything like this should occur, we shall ourselves cassate the decision, but inflict therewith such exemplary punishment on the judge for lack of understanding of his duty and the purpose of his appointment as will prevent a repetition of such cases. So they'll make an example of him so others won't repeat what he did. That's how it works today as well. I repeat that it must be borne in mind that we shall know every step of our administration, which only needs to be closely watched for the people to be content with us. For it has the right to demand from a good government a good official. Our government will have the appearance of a patriarchal, paternal guardianship on the part of our ruler. So our ruler is going to look like he's a good leader and a parent, but he's going to be a dictator. Our own nation and our subjects will discern in his person a father caring for their every need, their every act, their every interrelation as subjects one with another, as well as their relations to the ruler. They will then be so thoroughly imbued with the thought that it is impossible for them to dispense with this wardship and guidance. If they wish to live in peace and quiet, that they will acknowledge the autocracy of our ruler with a devotion bordering on apotheosis, especially when they are convinced that those whom we set up do not put their own in place of authority. but only blindly execute his dictates. They will be rejoiced that we are regulated everything in their lives as is done by wise parents who desire to train children in the cause of duty and submission. For the peoples of the world, in regard to the secrets of our polity, are ever through the ages only children under age, precisely as are also their governments. So some people worship Obama like this, right? Obama has swag, he's handsome, and he comes in and he's black. So because he's black, you assume he's you. And so you support everything he does when he has done zero for you, which is the most amazing thing, right? He was the gay president and he fought for gays and gay rights, but he never once fought for the black man, especially the Negro, the ADOS, the descendants of slaves and American descendants of slaves. He's never done anything for them, right? But our people worship him. And I've actually lost a childhood friend over me talking bad over, about Obama and what he hasn't done. And, we were like brothers, but he worshiped Obama like a god and couldn't handle it. So we sort of fell out. As you see, I found our despotism on right and duty. The right to compel the execution of duty is the direct obligation of a government which is a father for its subjects. It has the right of the strong that it may use it for the benefit of directing humanity towards that order which is defined by nature, namely submission. Everything in the world is in a state of submission, if not to man, then to circumstances or its own inner character, in all cases to what is stronger. And so shall we be this something stronger for the sake of good. We are obligated without hesitation to sacrifice individuals who commit a breach of established order. For in the exemplary punishment of evil lies a great educational problem. When the king of Israel sets upon his sacred head the crown offered him by Europe, he will become patriarch of the world. The indispensable victims offered by him in consequence of their suitability will never reach the number of victims offered in the course of centuries by the mania of magnificence, the emulation between the Goy governments. Our king will be in constant communion with the people, making to them from the tribune speeches which fame will in that same hour distribute over all the world. So he's going to have the level of fame that Obama had with many black people, where he could do no wrong, where he seems like he's a good guy who cares for you, while he destroys and bombs nations and you don't say anything, right? We see this system in place, and the Most High is going to bring it down. Thank the Lord. Esau has allowed European Christianity to teach the end of the age and the return of Christ, so that you will not oppose their coming kingdom, that they want to put their Antichrist king on the throne. So their intention is to put their Antichrist king on the throne and make you submit to this new system where you have no say. But you're not going to want out of the system, because just like today, you have an artificial system where you can go get food quickly. You can have some air condition and some light. But what you trade is your freedom. You trade your liberties for this new system. And so you're really a slave, Neo, in a system that they make billions and pay no taxes. You pay taxes, and if you lose your job, you can't enjoy this system. So that's a method of control. While they never work at all, ever. They travel from one resort to the next resort and they travel to a custom resort that's just for them that you don't know exist. And they have many secrets and many places in this world where you don't even know exist that they reside and meet. And you go working day to day just to get a retirement, just to die, and hopefully pass something on to your kids. But the system is designed to take that as well, which is why property tax exists. So even if you're debt free and you want to leave something to your kids and your kids don't have enough money to pay for the property, it belongs to the state. So although you think you own property, you don't. You're renting from the state. And the second you don't pay taxes, they can steal it. And in the system that the Most High had initially in place, when you chose a plot of land, when you claimed that land was yours. Today that does not exist. Today you rent everything. Today you rent travel, right? You rent vehicles, you rent property. You own nothing. And you know the most amazing thing is, even when your parents try to leave you a legacy, that legacy gets taxed when it was already taxed. But you get taxed again for inheriting something that your family left you. This is the system that's in the protocols. This is a beast system that you're in today. And so we're going to end there, and we'll pick up with protocol number 16 next time. Peace and blessing, Israel. Your captivity is ending.